Hey everybody, I'm David from Grayfish Design, and this course is a complete guide to user experience design. We will cover the entire design circle using the design thinking philosophy. This course will cover an overall flow of 1. Understand, 2. Explore, and 3. Materialize. Within this flow there will be 6 phases: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement. And don't worry if these terms sound scary, I assure you they're not. By the end of this course, you will know how to start from an idea and end up with a product and/or service that you can implement in the real world. Are you ready? Let's jump right in. Welcome to the course, I'm glad you joined. So once again, this course will follow a structure of 3 main topics: understand, explore, and materialize. Within these 3 topics will lie the 6 more detailed topics that we talked about in the introduction. My name is David from Grayfish Design, and let's get right into it. I'll begin by giving an introduction on what UX design actually is, when it was founded, and how it can best be described. After that, we'll go into the 3 main topics, and we'll end off with a summary including some key takeaways and some recommendations for literature in the field of UX design. So what is UX design? UX design, or user experience design, focuses on the interaction between real human users like you and me and products and/or services like phones, computers, or even office printers. UX design is an extremely diverse topic combining psychology, business, market research, design, and technology. So how do you feel when you open your favorite app on your phone? Or how do you feel when you walk in Starbucks and you smell the fresh coffee? And do you get calmer when you walk into a doctor's office? These feelings or user experiences have all been designed with great attention to the user, although the waiting room could be improved on. But this is all user experience design. But what is the origin of user experience design and how is it defined? UX is not new. In fact, it has been around since the 1990s, when Donald Norman, working as a cognitive scientist at Apple, invented the term UX design. He was interested in all of the aspects of the user's experience when working with a product or service, including industrial design, graphics, user interface, and physical interaction. And in order to cover all the different elements that determine how a user feels when using a product, he came up with the term user experience design. Don is also the co-founder of the Nielsen Norman Design Group, who basically came up with the Design Thinking 101 philosophy that we're going to be using throughout this course. But what does a UX designer actually do? As a UX designer, you're there to make products enjoyable, usable, and accessible for their users. UX designers tend to work as part of a broader team, bridging the gap between the user, the development team, and some key business stakeholders. Stakeholders are basically the people that are invested in the product. This could be investors, or your boss, or everyone that's dependent on it in some way or another. Despite the variety that UX design has, there are some general things that basically every UX designer does. We'll discuss these in detail later on, but for now, they are conducting user research, creating user personas, determining the structure of a product, this is also called the information architecture, designing user flows and wireframes, prototyping, and doing user testing. It is important to know that UX designers are not necessarily responsible for creating the visual aspect of a product. This is covered by UI designers, but these terms often get confused because they intertwine so much. A UX designer really focuses on the journey that a user has while using the product. UI design stands for user interface design, which could be a part of your job as a UX designer, but it's not in the role of a UX designer per definition. Let's jump into the UX design circle. Do you want to watch the rest of the course for free? You can do so by signing up through my Skillshare link in the video description. This entire course is also available as a 40-page long ebook containing all the illustrations, charts, information, and recommendations you'd ever need. Be sure to check it out in the link in the video description. So in this chapter, we'll explain the UX design circle and what it's all about. We'll briefly cover every phase of the design circle, and in the next chapters we'll go into detail. So this design circle is best described by the Design Thinking 101 philosophy that is created by the Nielsen Norman Design Group, who we talked about earlier. This design thinking ideology states that a hands-on, user-centered way of designing can lead to innovation, which can then lead to a competitive advantage. AKA, if you focus on your user when creating a product, you're gonna make money. This hands-on, user-centered approach is described by 3 phases containing 2 phases each. These are the ones that we touched on earlier. The overall flow of understand, explore, and materialize is then detailed by the 6 phases of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement. Phase 1, empathize. The empathize phase is all about conducting user research to develop a knowledge base of your user, to get to understand them. You want to know what your users do, say, think, and feel. Imagine your goal is to improve the onboarding experience for new users. An onboarding experience is basically their first experience with your product and you want to hook them in. At this stage, it's necessary to connect with actual users and understand what they feel and think while using the product. And you should ask yourself, what features of my product reduce the motivation of the users, or what features of my product actually motivates my users to use the product? The goal here is to collect enough data to actually know what your users think, so you can use this in later stages. Phase 2, the define phase. This phase is all about combining all of the data that you gathered in the first phase and then observing if some patterns exist. These patterns can be the base for your innovation. For example, if you see that all the runners on a running path take a red light, there's probably something wrong with the placement of that red light and you should fix it. Phase 3, ideate. In this phase, you brainstorm some crazy and creative ideas that pinpoint the needs that we just discussed. In this phase, you should give yourself and your team creative freedom. No idea is too crazy or far-fetched, and quantity supersedes quality. You want to push out as many ideas as possible. Teamwork is the dream work, so you should mix and match all of the ideas together to just come up with as much ideas as possible. Phase 4, prototyping. In this phase, you should build real tactile representations of parts or your complete product. The goal of this phase is to understand which parts work and which parts don't. In this phase, you decide which features you want to continue with and which features you want to drop off with, depending on how feasible they are in the real life, meaning could they actually be implemented or not. Besides this, you also want to look at the impact a feature has on the product. Does it make the product better than before? Keep it. Does it make the product worse than before? Remove it. Speed often really is the key, so you should make your thoughts tactile in a quick way. For example, if you want to make a new landing page, just draw it out on pen and paper and get some feedback. After the feedback, design it in Photoshop. Get some more feedback. After that feedback, write it in dirty, quick code. Get some more feedback. Take it a step further every time and repeat. Phase 5, test. Return to your users for feedback and ask yourself if the changes that you've made actually improved on the product. This phase kind of combines with prototyping, as you should switch from one to the other real quick. It's best if you know what you want to test in this phase, since you then can choose the testing methods that you want, but we'll get into detail on those later on. Phase 6, implementing. In this phase, you want to make sure that you actually implement what you did. You want to put your product in the hands of your actual users. The design thinking philosophy has a big impact on organizations, but only if it actually gets implemented. That's why this step is so crucial to this process. Now we'll get into detail on every phase of the process. Join me in the next chapter to do just that. Do you want to watch the rest of the course for free? You can do so by signing up through my Skillshare link in the video description. This entire course is also available as a 40-page long ebook containing all the illustrations, charts, information, and recommendations you ever need. Be sure to check it out in the link in the video description.